sea turtles. The animals seemed to be migrating, and the sight of the enormous group caught the attention of many tourists. Since the island had a turtle sanctuary, no one thought much of it. In the geology office, Emily analyzed the collected samples and discovered that the water dripping in the fissure contained few minerals, indicating that it had not seeped from the soil. Instead, the temperature changes in the cave had caused the condensation of water vapor in the air. To collect more data, Emily and Hawker headed to the volcano's crater to install monitoring devices. The machines would issue warnings upon detecting geological changes. However, upon reaching the mountainside, Emily discovered a new fissure in the center of the range. Hawker measured it and found it was 50 centimeters wide, with signs of subsidence in the surrounding areas. Emily installed a device near the fissure, and as soon as the machine activated, alarming data came through. When the team looked at the screen, they were horrified to see that the internal temperature of the mountain had increased dramatically. Hearing the commotion, Alvaro rushed to the hall and realized that volcanic activity was increasing. He quickly called Emily, instructing them to leave the site immediately. However, before he could finish, a large white cloud rose from the fissure. Emily realized that the pressure under the volcano was changing rapidly. If the volcano erupted, the consequences would be catastrophic. They quickly descended the mountain and, on the way, encountered a group of people heading up. They tried to warn the group to leave, but before they could finish, the white smoke enveloped the entire group. Amid the chaos, Emily ran in the wrong direction and fell down a slope. Fortunately, Hawker didn't abandon her. When Emily woke up in the hospital, her first thought was about the imminent volcanic eruption, and seeing no one, she presumed that Alvaro had already issued an evacuation order. But as she left the room, she realized there was no such order. Emily saw Alvaro sitting on a bench outside her room. It turned out that the volcano had not erupted the previous day. Alvaro analyzed the data and concluded that the white smoke was simply the volcano releasing pressure. Once the internal pressure had decreased to a safe level, he decided not to issue an evacuation order. Hearing his explanation, Emily couldn't contain her frustration. As a geologist, she knew that when a volcano releases pressure, it means it has entered the eruption phase. The fissures at the summit couldn't release all the pressure. Emily instructed Alvaro to issue an evacuation order immediately, warning that if the volcano erupted, it would be too late. However, despite Emily's insistence, Alvaro still refused. He was concerned that his findings might lead to another false alarm, like years ago. It wasn't about fearing dismissal, but the immense cost of evacuating the entire island, far beyond what they could bear. Annoyed that Alvaro only cared about costs on his computer, Emily persistently insisted that the volcano was about to erupt. She demanded that Alvaro alert the entire island, threatening to disclose the information online herself, even if she faced backlash if the volcano did not erupt. Eventually, Alvaro proposed a compromise. He took Emily to City Hall to meet with the mayor's secretary, Ms. Mary. However, upon hearing about the possible eruption, Mary's reaction mirrored Alvaro's. She even argued that the island's inhabitants wouldn't believe any data, and unless the volcano were smoking or shaking, they wouldn't leave. Emily felt trapped but remained determined to make the information public. After some consideration, Mary proposed a solution, which was to publish the data in the newspaper to alert residents about the possibility of an eruption. They could then monitor the data daily to decide if evacuation would be necessary, preparing the residents and facilitating an evacuation if needed. Although dissatisfied, Emily reluctantly agreed to this plan. Meanwhile, at the beach, Sarah was talking to her new friend named Charlotte. They even planned a volleyball game later. However, when Sarah opened her phone, Charlotte noticed a video on social media of Sarah showing her playing volleyball the previous day, with a very offensive caption. It turned out that a boy from the game had secretly filmed Charlotte because he thought she was pretty. Charlotte misinterpreted it, thinking Sarah was complicit, and left angrily. Confused, Sarah tried to explain, but Charlotte was already gone. Discouraged, Sarah returned to the hotel. Back in her room, Sarah heard her parents arguing about trivial issues. She heard her father, Frederick, dissatisfied with her mother Jennifer's conversation with a stranger the day before. The fight between them grew in intensity, even bringing the children into it. Hearing her father's criticism, Sarah felt even more disheartened. She called her Uncle Jack and asked him to book a plane ticket to leave the island. Knowing Sarah was upset, Jack immediately guessed that Jennifer and Frederick were fighting again. He wanted to call Jennifer to check on how she was doing, but couldn't reach her because her phone was on silent mode. Unable to contact his sister, Jack helped Sarah book the flight. While Sarah was packing her things, the geology office issued an alarm. Emily ran to the main hall and witnessed a horrific scene. The pressure under the volcano had spiked dramatically. Emily predicted that the volcano would erupt within a few hours and instructed Alvaro to issue an evacuation order immediately. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Alvaro quickly informed the mayor, who confirmed the danger and ordered the evacuation. However, no one noticed a plane taking off from a runway at the base of the volcano. Learning of the impending eruption, the pilot wanted to abort the takeoff, but since the plane had already left the ground, he tried to speed up to reach a safe altitude before the eruption. However, at that moment, the volcano unexpectedly erupted. A huge black plume obscured visibility, preventing the pilot from changing course. The plane was engulfed in ash, and its engines were damaged, eventually causing the aircraft to crash near the volcano. Meanwhile, Jennifer took her phone to call Sarah and Tobias to prepare them for the evacuation. But when she checked her messages, she saw a text from Jack saying that Sarah had boarded a plane to leave the island. Jennifer and Frederick panicked and drove to the accident site. When they arrived, rescue teams were already there, and many tourists had joined the rescue efforts. Fortunately, the captain managed an emergency landing, saving most passengers. Jennifer searched frantically but could not find Sarah. From the rescue team, they learned that some passengers in the front row were still missing, and Sarah's name was on the list. Devastated, the couple returned to the hotel, preparing to receive their daughter's remains. However, when they arrived at the hotel, they found Sarah sitting on the sofa watching TV with Tobias. In fact, Sarah had boarded the plane, but just before takeoff, she became worried about Tobias and decided to stay. At that moment, Charlotte sent a message apologizing for misinterpreting the video. Relieved to clear her name and concerned about her brother, Sarah decided to go back. Seeing their children safe, Jennifer and Frederick sighed in relief. Later, Sarah meets with Charlotte and explains how her message had inadvertently saved her life. Charlotte was shocked by the story, and the two gradually reconciled. But Frederick's family had no idea that an even greater disaster awaited them. In the geology office, Alvaro had simulated the consequences of the eruption, and the results were grim. The volcano would cover the entire island. Alvaro proposed an evacuation during the night, but the politicians at City Hall hesitated. After the initial eruption, the volcano silenced temporarily, causing them to doubt the accuracy of the simulation and suspecting that pressure had decreased, possibly halting volcanic activity. Despite Emily's attempts to convince them, she failed. Losing her patience, Alvaro ordered the geology team to leave the island immediately. Emily returned home to take her brother with her but discovered that he had been arrested by the police for causing trouble after drinking. Emily tried to explain the urgency of the eruption. She instructed the police to evacuate before dealing with the case. But they said they hadn't received an evacuation order. Refusing to give up, Emily fiercely argued with the officers. Although they released her brother, they detained Emily for spreading false rumors. Despite her efforts to explain, she remained in custody. Meanwhile, Jack was sleeping at home when he received an urgent call from a colleague at the Foreign Office. They informed him that the volcano on the island had erupted and the situation was critical. Jack rushed to the office, which was already crowded with people. During the meeting, Jack learned that the previous eruption had created a fissure over 200 meters long across the island. Spanish geologists predicted that geological changes could cause landslides and tsunamis. The worst part was that the landslides could intensify the eruption, escalating the disaster to its peak. Looking at the simulation results, Jack was horrified to remember that his sister Jennifer and her family were still on the island. After the meeting, Jack quickly checked the flights and found that all flights in the area had been cancelled. Even ferry routes were avoiding the region. However, he found a ferry near another island adjacent to lava, scheduled to depart in 20 minutes. On the island, Jennifer was still oblivious to the danger. Feeling guilty for often neglecting Sarah's emotions, she decided to spend quality time with her daughter. Just when Jennifer was about to enter the water, Jack called, warning her of the urgent situation. Hearing his warning, Jennifer realized the gravity of the threat and quickly began packing her family to leave the island. While packing, Sarah remembered her friend Charlotte and wanted to find her so they could evacuate together. However, Charlotte was not at the hotel and her phone was not answering. Jennifer warned Sarah that there was no time to search, and reluctantly Sarah left the hotel with her family. As they reached the hotel entrance, Frederick noticed a small pickup parked nearby, and with the driver occupied, he signaled for the family to get in, then started the vehicle and left before the driver could stop them. After a few minutes on the road, they arrived at the port, where a ferry was about to depart. However, as the family prepared to disembark, Frederick noticed the pickup driver running after them. He told Jennifer to take the children ahead while he stayed to deal with the driver. After resolving the situation and paying compensation, Frederick hurried but arrived too late, and the ferry had already left. Meanwhile, Charlotte, still sitting on the beach, saw a missed call from Sarah. When she called back, Sarah urgently warned her that she needed to leave the island immediately due to the volcanic eruption and the possibility of a tsunami. Before Sarah could finish, the ground suddenly began to shake. Looking at the volcano's crater, they saw dense black smoke rising again. Only then did the tourists realize the danger and rush toward the port. Frederick, who had lost the ferry with his family, met White, whom he had encountered at a bar. With White's help, Frederick managed to board a small boat. Just as the boat was about to leave the dock, a woman carrying a child ran up, pleading to be allowed on board or at least to take her child. Seeing her desperate situation, Frederick decided to give up his spot for them. His sacrifice earned him the admiration of everyone on board. After leaving the port, Frederick tried to gather information about the evacuation efforts but realized that the officials had already fled. With no other options, he called Jennifer, asking her to take good care of the children. Meanwhile, in the geology office, monitoring equipment indicated a sharp increase in volcanic pressure. Alvaro immediately contacted the mayor, requesting an evacuation order. Witnessing the volcano's eruption, the mayor didn't hesitate and immediately issued a warning for the entire island. Eric, hearing the evacuation sirens, rushed to the station to release Emily. At first, the female officer on duty refused to release her, citing a lack of orders. However, when a male officer entered the room announcing that the volcano had erupted, she panicked and ran away. Eric seized the opportunity, grabbed the keys, and unlocked Emily's cell, also freeing another inmate in the next cell. Outside the station, Eric and Emily found Frederick, who had just discovered that there were no more boats at the port. Eric revealed that he had a hidden speedboat on the beach behind the mountain and invited Frederick to join them. Fortunately, the speedboat was well camouflaged, and no one had found it. But as the three prepared to leave, the freed inmate unexpectedly appeared with a gun. Assuming he wanted a spot on the boat, Eric invited him to board, but the man insisted they leave and declared that the boat was his. Eric refused to back down and lunged at the man. During the struggle, the gun accidentally fired, injuring the young man. Emily rushed to Eric, but unfortunately, the wound was fatal. Without hesitation, Frederick attacked the assailant, knocking him down with a rock and drowning him. Moments later, the man's accomplices arrived, but brave Frederick quickly seized the gun and took control of the situation. After securing the boat, Frederick and Emily departed, leaving the island behind. Meanwhile, Jennifer and the children managed to catch the last flight off the island. However, before boarding, Sarah spotted Charlotte in the crowd. She told her mother and brother to board first while she went back to get Charlotte. Since Charlotte hadn't bought a ticket, she couldn't board.